Om Shanti. Are you all happy? In this video, we are going to see the spiritual significance of lunar eclipse. We're not going to see about the scientific happening behind that lunar eclipse, but about the spiritual significance. Just because we do not know anything about the spiritual reason behind the worship on lunar eclipse, we tend to cling on to the science and start giving some scientific reasons for why we are not supposed to eat on lunar eclipse, why the temples are being closed, so and so. But that has nothing to do with the spiritual truth that's behind the celebration on lunar eclipse at the time of eclipse. As we all know, the actual thing that happens during eclipse is the moon light is being obstructed by earth. Actually, the moon doesn't produce any light on its own, so it just reflects the light from the sun, but the earth comes in between sun and moon, which is why we see the shadow created by earth on the moon. So that is what that's actually happening there. But what's the spiritual significance of this act? Nobody knows that. That's the truth. Nobody knows that. It is not written in any Vedas. So if you browse through the videos on this topic, all you see will be what we should do, what we should not do. And they try to link that with science. But in this video, for the first time, we are going to see the actual spiritual significance behind considering that lunar eclipse to be something spiritual. So, and the story, the mythological story behind that lunar eclipse is something that we are quite familiar with. If you're not, let me take it through that. When the deities and the demons were churning the ocean of milk and get the nectar or amrit, Lord Vishnu takes the form of a beautiful girl called Mohini, and she starts distributing the nectar. The deities were placed to sit on one side and the demons on the opposite side. A demon called Ragukedu, he suspects whether Mohini will distribute the nectar to demons at all. So he takes the form of a deity and sit in between the sun and moon deities. So without noticing this, Mohini places Amrit to the demon, but the sun and the moon identifies this demon and informs that to Mohini. On hearing this, Mohini strikes the head of Ragakedu. So the head was cut off from the body. So it is actually the snake demon. So to take revenge on the sun and the moon who caught him, he engulfs both sun and moon once in a year after getting some uh, special blessing from Brahma. So that's the actual story, mythological story behind that lunar eclipse. It means a snake is engulfing the entire moon and sun. So now we all know that nothing of that sort is happening to sun or moon. But still we continue to stay empty stomach during the eclipse time and also keep the temples closed. And also we inform pregnant ladies not to come out of their homes. What is the reason? We need not cling on to science to give the explanation to this. We may not know the spiritual significance. Even without that, just by considering this mythological story, we can say that this is done to mark the sadness of this event, right? Because the sun itself is facing such a sad thing that it is being engulfed. So we just mourn during that time. That is why we don't do anything. That is what it means according to that story. If we link to that story, that's the actual reason. But whether or not if we consume something during that time and if we get some um, side effects, that should be purely coincidence. That is not the reason that we are mourning at that time, right? If Gandhi was killed at particular time and we all mourn for at least 1 minute on that particular time each year, this may not have any scientific uh, reasoning, right? If we don't mourn, if something happens to that, that should be purely coincidence, right? So let's see the spiritual significance of this now. We're going to enter the topic just now. The term spiritual itself means it is not physical or not material. But the reason they say to stay empty stomach during eclipse is purely the physical reason or the material reason. That cannot be spiritual, right? But what we are going to see now is the spiritual reason. Spiritual itself means everything related to the spirit, the soul, the life energy, Atma. That is what spiritual means. Atma or the soul. Atma is Hindi word for the soul or the life energy. The soul shines like a very tiny star, tiniest of all the things that one can actually see in this world or one can imagine in this world. It's so tiny, so subtle, and it exists in between the eyebrows. That's where the soul exists in every human. That soul is being eclipsed. That is why we do certain things or we don't do certain things during the lunar eclipse. So now let's see. When is the soul gets eclipsed? And which soul gets eclipsed? As a matter of fact, all souls in the entire world gets eclipsed. It's been eclipsed for the past 2500 years. And now it's totally eclipsed. It started 2500 years back and now it is totally being eclipsed. So we know how human minds think now. It is totally filled with selfishness. It's totally corrupt now. A man can do anything to achieve what he wants. He can even kill his wife, kill his children, kill his parents. He's ready to do anything to achieve what he desires. So he become that selfish now at the end of this Kali Yuga. So it means all human minds are totally eclipsed now. Eclipsed by what? That's the next question. There, the moon is eclipsed by a snake. Here, who eclipses or what eclipses all human minds or all human souls? It is also being eclipsed by a snake, but not the snake that we know of, that we see with our physical eyes, not that snake. But it is the snake that is mentioned in Bible and Quran as Satan that induces Adam and Eve to taste that forbidden fruit. It is that snake. Does it exist in a physical form? No, never. It doesn't represent the snake, the living creature that we know of. No, not that snake. So, what is this snake? This name snake exists above the head of most of the Hindu deities. The five-headed cobra, that is the Satan mentioned in Bible also. This five-headed cobra is the Satan. This is also called as Maya or Ravan. So what is it actually? It is nothing but lust, anger, attachment, jealousy, ego. These five vices or vicars are called the five-headed snake or Maya or Saturn. This is the snake that is responsible for eclipsing all human souls. No soul can now distinguish between what is actually right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false. All human souls have lost that ability now. Does it mean it has that ability once? Was there any time that human souls were in its full power to think and distinguish between right and wrong? Yes, there was. 2500 years back, it was in its full power. Do you know how much power it had? Whatever it thinks, that will happen in that very instant. For example, if somebody wants now to rain, it will rain. And if somebody wants it to stop, it will stop in that very instant. All human minds had that capacity 2500 years back, and we have lost it totally now. We do not have even a fraction of that power now. That means we are totally eclipsed now. That's the condition of every single soul now. And now, God Himself has come to the earth to rescue us from the eclipse. And that God is one. God is just one, not many gods. There is only one God. And that God doesn't take birth like humans. He doesn't enter a womb, but he still takes birth. How? He just enters an old man's body and he names him Brahma, and through his mouth he starts giving his knowledge. And those who listen to the knowledge and identifies that it is actually the God that speaks through that old man's, that Brahma's mouth, they are called Brahma Kumars and Brahma Kumaris. Yes, God speaks through Brahma Kumaris. For more than 80 years now. So he comes 100 years before the destruction of this Kali Yuga. He comes and he reveals the secret that you are being eclipsed. You are eclipsed. You are completely eclipsed now. So you have considered everything that is wrong to be right. And God says, lust is the number one enemy that corrupts your mind. That's the reason you have lost all the power. And that's the reason the whole world is filled with selfishness. That's the reason even nature has become so angry and it creates so much natural calamities that causes so much sufferings to the world. Only when you get relieved from this eclipse, the whole world will regain its original nature, which is filled with pure love, peace, and prosperity. Because the whole world was just like that 2500 years back, and it was called heaven. Yes, heaven was, this earth itself was heaven 2500 years back, especially India. A small portion of India was heaven. It was filled with gold. The buildings were constructed out of stones of gold. It was so rich. You know why? Because no humans have any idea about what lust is, what anger is, what attachment is, what ego is, what jealousy is. They are totally ignorant of these vices, which is why they had that ability, which is why they were so rich. So it is their human mind that determines their prosperity. and we didn't know that. Only now God reveals all this secret. Yes, the God created heaven. God created earth as heaven in the beginning, and God created human as angels in the beginning, as deities in the beginning, and that deities were still being worshipped by Hindus throughout India because they were here. This same India was heaven for 2500 years. For the first 2500 years, this India was heaven for the first 2500 years. For the next 2500 years, the same world has become hell as we see now. And there is just 20 years more. For what? For this world to be renewed back to heaven. Yeah, just as January comes after the end of December, heaven will come at the end of hell. This is the time cycle that we are totally ignorant of. This is called Kalpa cycle, and this is also called chakra, and God reveals this. The heaven automatically becomes hell. In heaven, we didn't consider ourselves as the perishable body because we consider now to be this perishable body. We become slaves for these five vices: lust, anger, attachment, ego, jealousy. But they, or we, in the beginning, when we were angels, we didn't realize ourselves as the body. We did not have this body consciousness. Instead, we considered ourselves to be the imperishable soul, eternal soul that shines between the eyebrows like a star. We are totally aware of that. That is, we were soul conscious in the beginning. Just as a driver doesn't consider himself to be the car, but he knows he is inside the car, but he is the one that controls the car. Similarly, we didn't consider ourselves to be this car, the body. Instead, we considered to be the driver of this car, the soul, for the first 2500 years, which is why we had that tremendous ability of our thoughts. And now, God says it is time to go back to heaven, to convert this old world back into the new world. And it is time to shed this old body and take the new body of the deities and enter heaven. Which is why God reveals this secret called Rajayoga secret. God says, I'm the only one who never loses the power, even for a fraction of a second. You know why? Because I never take birth like you. So I never become body conscious like you. So to regain soul conscious, connect your mind to me, the God, who doesn't become body conscious even for a fraction of a second throughout the 5000-year time cycle. So more we connect our mind to God, the more soul conscious we become. So more power our souls get. How can we recognize whether or not we have gained that power? Yes, it is quite evident from the fact that we lose interest in lust, anger, attachment, jealousy, and ego. We will no longer be slaves to those five vices. Do you know what happens as a result? We will become equal to God. We will be so happy. We will be so blissful, just like God. Yes, the soul has the capacity to become as pure as God. And the only way to become pure, the only way to wash away our sins of past births is by connecting our mind to God. So far, nobody knows how God looks like. No religion has ever revealed that. If it has, then there is no need for God to come now. And God says, I'm also a soul, but I'm supreme to all the souls, which is why I'm called the Supreme Soul, Param Atma. I'm the Father of all souls, which is why I'm called the Supreme Father, Paramapida. I'm the creator of heaven, which is why I'm called the Heavenly Father. And I'm one, not many. God is one, just one. All the others are His creations. Whether it is Jesus, whether it is Nabi, Muhammad, whether it is Buddha, whether it is Sri Krishna, everybody is His creation. The Creator is one. He doesn't send any of His creation to spread His message. He Himself comes only once in the end and gives this knowledge of Rajayogi. Rajayogi is nothing but considering ourselves as an imperishable soul and connecting our mind with our Father, God Shiva. That's it. So, the more you connect your mind with God Shiva, the more we come out of this eclipse of five vices. So when we reach the stage that we come totally out of the eclipse, that is when Kali Yuga ends and Satyug begins. Satyug is the beginning of heaven. So it will continue to be heaven for the first 2500 years. And it means we are totally out of eclipse for the first 2500 years, and after that we are being eclipsed for the next 2500 years. The eclipse starts 2500 years back and it ends just now. So it is time to come out of the eclipse by connecting our mind to nothing else but to one God. But if we connect our mind to anything in this world or with anybody in this world, we will still be eclipsed. So this is not the time to be eclipsed but to come out of the eclipse. So we were deities in the living form for the first 2500 years, right? So just as the remembrance of that, the temples were built by Hindus. It's nobody but us. We souls were deities in the beginning, and we totally forget that and we have become ordinary humans now. So the heaven itself is shown as the temple. The temple actually is the memorial of heaven, and the deities is the memorial of the living deities. The idols were the memorials of the deities. So the reason they keep the temples closed during the eclipse means that we deities, when we start getting eclipsed, the door of heaven is closed, which means the heaven itself is changed to hell. So that is why we keep the doors of the temples closed during the eclipse. And the reason we don't do anything, we don't even eat anything during the eclipse is we lose all our powers, and our mind has lost its power to distinguish between the right and wrong when we are being eclipsed. And that is why we don't do any action during the eclipse. So that is the actual spiritual significance of the things that we do during lunar eclipse. So this is the actual reason, and God reveals it through Brahma Kumaris. So to know more truth, rush to the nearest Brahma Kumaris center as soon as possible, because God has been here for the past 80 years. So He is going to be here for very few years. Who knows, maybe very few months. So we are at the end now. So don't waste any more time. Go to the Brahma Kumari Center as soon as possible. This knowledge is given totally free of cost in all centers, and it is located across the globe. It is present in almost all the countries. If it is not present there, it would be present mostly. So search in the internet for the Brahmakumari Center in your country, in your state, in your town. You will get it. Even if you don't get it, you can search for the Murlis on the internet. So that Murli is the actual knowledge given directly by God through Brahma, through the mouth of Brahma. So you keep on listening to it, you can understand it gradually, and after understanding it fully, you'll be you will remain blissful throughout your life. It will be permanent, and you will gradually lose interest in all the vices that's been giving nothing but worries to the mankind. So hope you all understand the spiritual significance behind the lunar eclipse, and it is now your turn to spread the message to your family members and friends and relatives. Thanks for watching, um, and this to know the basic knowledge of South Indian language, we'll provide the link. From that you can, if you belong to South India, you can know the knowledge in your mother tongue. Om Shanti. Thanks for watching.